Hi there. Apologies for not being on the show tonight, but unfortunately due to a prior commitment, I can't be here with you. However, that hasn't stopped the conversations that have been going on between our little group over the last few days. And I think the conversations that we've been having have been quite pertinent and quite interesting, and we thought that perhaps if I could start off the dialogue today and throw a few things at you, then it might have cause for conversation. So here we go. I'm going to start off with a topic that obviously everybody will moan and groan immediately when they hear me say the word, but it's ticketing, or more importantly, attendance at games, because that's been a hot topic, hasn't it, this week? Fresh from Man City and returning their 5,000 tickets for the Cup semi-final. We've had Arsenal fans complaining that the atmosphere at the Emirates in midweek was impacted by tourists, apparently. At the same time, Arsenal as a football club refused PSG their full allocation of tickets, reducing them by over 400. In the past, we've seen tourists being blamed for poor attendance at the London Stadium, despite the fact that West Ham, who used to get 38,000, now get 60,000, which has always baffled me. Old Trafford and the Etihad. We've had rumblings ourselves about the availability of tickets and whether tourists should get tickets. But I think from our perspective, it's more to do with the ticket availability not meeting the demand, rather than anything that's impacting the atmosphere inside St James's. Now, I don't want to dwell on ticketing per se, because we've discussed it many times in the last 3 or 4 years, and just like the rest of you, many have been burnt out by it, and certainly Mitch and Stephen, myself and George, Stewie on the professionals, and the rest of the lads are probably exactly the same. However, let's not forget that Leeds and Burnley being promoted, Ipswich being relegated, we now have one extra American-owned club in the EPL for next season. And we all know that the US owners of football clubs seem to be driving many of the changes that are being initiated and introduced by the EPL. And these changes do directly impact fans. We've seen restrictions on season tickets over the last couple of years. We've seen the involvement of controversial ticket return schemes and policies that all clubs seem to have introduced at will. The proliferation of ticketing agencies and resellers, clubs' policy on reselling tickets at inflated prices, citing supply and demand as their excuse. And all of these initiatives that impact fans are not necessarily, in my eyes, for the better. Yes, younger supporters, non-season ticket holders and those jumping on the football bandwagon may like and encourage these changes. But what I call our legacy fans, and I consider myself one, mainly because of my age, I consider that if you're exactly the same situation as me, we've been through the thick and thin from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. We've been through the dying embers of Hullet and Souness football. We've supported amiably by Allardyce, weren't they? Because that was just as bad. And often the ones being ignored. It's been us, with little or no voice. But we've been the mainstay of the club. And that's the reason why our football club still exists, because we went through all those dire times, and we came out the other end. But this US influence concerns me because it's driven by money, by greed, and it's driven by self-interest. All those initiatives I mentioned have their origins in US sports, where the ethos is very much supply and demand. The bigger the game, the higher the ticket price. Hospitality at a price. That's why we have a section in St James's Park that costs £70,000 a season for 4 seats. That's £17,500 a season each. And it's full every week, that area, because those who can afford it do so. But remember the club survey? Would you be willing to pay £2,000 a season? I bet many of us said yes, without thinking, simply out of that blind loyalty that we have for our football club, as well as desire to be inside for a match. But what sacrifices were you going to have to make? And what sacrifices would there have to be made for a family of 4 if they all ended up having to pay £2,000 a season ticket? Man United are a perfect example of a club who are moving loyal fans from seats held for 50 plus years, because Ratcliffe and Ineos say that these seats are prime real estate and they see them as an opportunity to sell them for more. Manchester United and Man City were planning to charge disabled supporters crazy money simply to park near the stadium. How disgusting was that? West Ham have gone after concessionary fans, concessionary ticket holders. Why? Because the owners see them as easy pickings. And what is quickly becoming, let's face it, a dog-eat-dog world. I've noticed today that the club's advertising for a fan engagement manager. I'm not sure what and where this fits in and why one's required, but I'm sure that the club will be explained, especially as we already have a supporters liaison officer. But perhaps we should be looking at such a role, fan engagement manager, as a positive for us legacy fans, perhaps, especially after supporter services now look after season tickets, home tickets, away tickets, membership, hospitality, tours, club and other issues. Like, for example, can I bring this bag into a ground? Can I be a ball boy? Can my son be a ball boy, etc., etc.? The retail aspect, the fans, the supporters clubs that are now being brought out internationally, the FAB, accessibility, access to the stack, bookings for the stack, all that's done by supporter services. So I suppose their roles change dramatically, and a fan engagement officer might be excellent, might be just what this football club needs. I wonder if it'll expand the role of the SLO. In Germany, most clubs have 3 and 4 SLOs, if not more, but those SLOs are out on the ground and they work independently of the football club. So, you know, we all have our opinion on how things should be run and are being run. But let's see what this fan engagement manager role brings. So I suppose the question is, speaking for the silent majority, the legacy fan, let's ask the question, does the legacy fan have a place? More importantly, should it have a say in the future of the game, in the future of our club going forward? The discussion that matters, such as the new ground, are just as important to a 70-year-old as they are to a 7-year-old, even though that 7-year-old will benefit from that ground well after the 70-year-old has passed on. Will the new ground cater for all in terms of accessibility? And by that, and most important one being ticket prices. Ticket prices that are variable enough to ensure that the clubs leaves nobody behind. And I think that's important. If we're talking about a ground that's going to have 70, 75, 80,000 people, but we're hearing more and more about the importance of hospitality, and we're seeing prices now moving towards £65, £70 a match. Is that good for the game? Is it good, or will lots of people still be priced out? We're saying the more space in a new ground, the better. But if we're going to be priced out of it, it's not really going to be of any benefit. And I suppose people might think I'm lacking a bit of optimism here, but the reason for that is that I've been an advocate for communication between club and supporter as an imperative, because that's just the way I've been since the days that we set up Newcastle United Supporters Club and then Newcastle United Supporters Trust. And when I look at the Fans Advisory Board, and let's take the last set of minutes, for example, I think that the Fans Advisory Board has such a narrow remit and is too wrapped up in NDAs, carefully constructed minutes, to be seen as a genuine two-way stretch in regards communication and any influence that they might have on the club hierarchy. That's why I think platforms like ours and other social media platforms are a genuinely positive area to discuss change within the broader aspect of the game, as well as aspects of our football club. Because let's face it, change for change's sake is not always a good thing, particularly when it's being introduced without dialogue, or when that said dialogue is limited to a narrow few. Yes, by all means, cater for those with the disposable income that can have £17,500 a season for a ticket. but also cater for the family of 4, the family with 2, the family with 3 kids. Cater for the pensioners, cater for the young people that don't have as much disposable income as you might think. How do we persuade the club to not kill the golden goose with a new ground for the sake that it could turn out simply be the dodo because we can't afford to go? And that's why I'm thinking, let's think out of the box, and not just us, but I'm looking at the Supporters Trust here. Perhaps NUST need to broaden itself by speaking not just for its members, but opening itself up towards the wider fan base. Maybe that might help. Let's throw out the idea that if they were to do so, then it might benefit from an increased membership in the long run. At the moment, I look at it and I think its board appear to be stuck in the belief that it can only represent its members. But it fails to see that as the football club moves forward and moves with more worldwide interest in Newcastle United, and as that interest grows alongside success on the pitch, it's going to turn into an ever-depreciating part of a huge growing fan base. And I look back at what Mitch, myself and many of the other lads and lasses did when we set up and established NUST as a representative supporters trust for all supporters. We didn't view it simply as a members-only closed shop. And now, more than ever, we should be seeing the importance of being open to public consultation and scrutiny, there to test the water with the club with the views of the majority, or a wide range of related issues for the entire fan base, members and non-members alike. That's why here at NUFC Matters, we are passionate to have all the fans' voices heard. And that's why NUST and the fan and FAB representatives should be actively discussing the issues that affect supporters with the club, pointing out the cause and effect when the club seems to be heading down a certain path, be it on ticketing, the new ground itself, match day experience, or the price of a pint. Instead, they seem to be simply appeasing, and that's not good for the club or members. I think there's some broad things there to do with football, but there's some things that are specific to our football club. And I think if our football club can come together and we can get things right, then that's going to be for the benefit of football worldwide. It's a discussion point. It's something that I wanted to throw out there, and let's see what you guys think of it. Let's hear from you, and let's make this something that we can branch out, and perhaps other podcasts can start to pick up on as well. And we start to talk about the future of our football club, and we start to think that we're actually being heard. So let's get stuck into it, eh?